In our family home, there was an antique mirror that hung in the hallway. It was large and heavy, with an ornate gold frame that had intricate carvings of vines and flowers. The mirror had been in the family for generations, passed down from my great-grandmother to my grandmother, and then to my mother. Despite its age, the glass was clear and unblemished, reflecting everything perfectly, almost too perfectly. I never liked the mirror. It always gave me an uneasy feeling, like it was watching me whenever I walked past it. My mother, on the other hand, loved it. She said it was a piece of family history, a beautiful artifact that connected us to our ancestors. She insisted it stay in the hallway, even though I tried to convince her to move it to another room, or better yet, get rid of it altogether. One night, when I was about 16, I was home alone. My parents had gone out for dinner, and my younger brother was spending the night at a friend's house. I was in my room, doing homework, when I heard a faint sound coming from the hallway. It was a soft, rhythmic tapping, like someone was knocking gently on a door. I paused, listening. The house was old, so it often made strange noises. But this was different. It sounded deliberate, almost as if it was trying to get my attention. I got up and walked to the hallway, the tapping growing louder as I approached the mirror. When I reached it, the noise suddenly stopped, and I was left standing there, staring at my reflection. The hallway was dimly lit, and in the mirror, everything looked darker, more sinister. My reflection stared back at me, but something about it was off. The longer I looked, the more I noticed small, unsettling details. My eyes seemed darker, my expression colder. I shook my head, telling myself I was just imagining things, and went back to my room. But that night, I had the strangest dream. I was standing in front of the mirror, but instead of my own reflection, I saw a young woman with long, dark hair and pale skin. She wore a white dress that looked old-fashioned, like something from a century ago. Her expression was blank, almost sad, and she stood perfectly still, staring at me with hollow eyes. I tried to move, but I was frozen in place, unable to look away. The woman in the mirror began to smile, but it was a twisted, cruel smile that made my skin crawl. She reached out towards the glass, her hand pressing against it, as if she were trying to break through. I woke up in a cold sweat, my heart racing. It took me a few moments to realize I was safe in my bed, and that it was just a dream. But it felt so real, so vivid, that I couldn't shake the feeling of unease that lingered long after I woke up. The next morning, I told my mother about the dream. She dismissed it, saying it was probably just the result of watching too many horror movies. But I couldn't help but feel like there was something more to it. The woman in the mirror seemed so real, almost like a memory, rather than a dream. Over the next few weeks, the dreams continued. Each night, I found myself standing in front of the mirror, watching as the woman grew more and more menacing. Her smile became more twisted, her eyes darker, and I could feel her anger radiating through the glass. She never spoke, but I could sense that she wanted something from me, something I couldn't understand. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I woke up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, and decided to do something about the mirror. I grabbed a blanket and threw it over the mirror, covering it completely. I felt a strange sense of relief as soon as the glass was hidden, like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. The next morning, my mother noticed the blanket over the mirror and asked me why I had done it. I told her about the dreams, about the woman in the mirror, and how she was starting to scare me. My mother listened, but I could tell she didn't believe me. She pulled the blanket off the mirror and told me to stop being silly, that it was just a piece of glass and nothing more. That day, I went to the library to see if I could find anything about the mirror's history. I spent hours searching through old records, but there was nothing specific about the mirror itself. However, I did find something that made my blood run cold. I found an old newspaper article from the early 1900s about a young woman who had lived in our town. Her name was Eleanor Gray, and she was known for her beauty and charm. But one day, she simply vanished without a trace. The article mentioned that she had been engaged to a wealthy man, but shortly before the wedding, she disappeared. Some people believed she had run away, while others thought she had been murdered, though her body was never found. There was a photograph of Eleanor in the article, and when I saw it, my heart skipped a beat. She looked exactly like the woman in my dreams. The same long, dark hair, the same pale skin, the same haunting eyes. I hurried home, my mind racing with fear and questions. Could it be that the mirror was somehow connected to Eleanor? Was she trapped inside it, trying to reach out to someone, anyone who could help her? That night, I decided to confront the mirror. I waited until everyone was asleep. Then I went to the hallway and stood in front of it, my hands trembling. The mirror seemed darker than usual, as if it was absorbing the light around it. I took a deep breath and whispered, "Eleanor, if you're in there, show yourself." For a moment, nothing happened. I stared at my reflection, waiting, my heart pounding in my chest. Then, slowly, the image in the mirror began to change. My reflection faded away, replaced by Eleanor's face. She looked more desperate than ever, her eyes wide with fear, her hands pressed against the glass. Her mouth moved as if she was trying to speak, but no sound came out. I felt a surge of fear, but also pity. I knew she was trapped and she needed help, but what could I do? Suddenly, the mirror began to shake, as if something was trying to force its way out. I took a step back, horrified, as cracks started to form in the glass. Eleanor's face contorted with pain, and I heard a faint, ghostly scream that sent chills down my spine. The mirror shattered, the glass exploding outward with a deafening crash. I shielded my face with my arms, and when I looked up, the hallway was silent. The mirror lay in pieces on the floor, the gold frame cracked and broken. But Eleanor was gone. I stood there, breathing heavily, trying to process what had just happened. The sense of dread that had hung over the house for weeks seemed to lift, replaced by an eerie calm. I knew that whatever had been haunting the mirror was gone, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Eleanor was still out there somewhere, finally free from whatever had trapped her. The next morning, my parents were shocked to see the shattered mirror, but I told them it had simply fallen off the wall. They didn't question it, and the broken pieces were quickly cleaned up and taken away. But sometimes, late at night, I still hear that faint, rhythmic tapping. And when I look into a mirror, any mirror, I can't help but wonder if I'll see Eleanor's face staring back at me, still searching for a way out.